meeting of the Hubbardston Agricultural Advisory Committee. This meeting, is it being broadcast live?
Yes.
Yes.
This meeting is being broadcast live and digitally recorded. I don't believe we have a Zoom component, so I'm not gonna give that spiel. Just for the public that might be listening, this is an advisory committee that was formed by a joint venture between the Economic Development Committee, the Planning Board, and the Select Board in order to investigate specifications and the steps that we need to take to come up with a zoning package to encourage agro-tourism and eco-tourism. So with that said, moving along the agenda, are there any public comments? Are there any comments that were sent in to anybody that we would share? All right, moving forward, minutes for acceptance. We have the minutes from May 16th, 2022.
Yeah, I had read these when they were in the thing, they looked good to me.
They look good to me too. Do I have
I have copy.
do I have a motion to accept them?
I'd like to make a motion to accept May 16th minutes.
Second?
Here in a first and a second, any discussion or corrections? The only thing that I wanted to add to this, and I think maybe it doesn't belong in here, is we had a discussion about the allowable uses. Mostly I bring it up because I'm trying to find my note sheet that listed all of the allowable uses we had talked about. I don't know if anybody else had a copy of that, but I think that might be more detailed than is needed for the minutes.
Oh, you want to include them in the minutes?
Well, I think we'll probably-
Not just that we reviewed them.
Well, I think it's probably more detailed than we need to include into the minutes. So I guess maybe we just don't worry about that. And I'll continue to look further for my note sheet from that. Anybody else have anything else about it? All right, so let's have a vote.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, recognizing we have a quorum, the vote is unanimous, the minutes are accepted. All right, so moving on to what we're here for. So, good to see you, Karen.
Good to see you as well.
Please identify yourself for the record and the public.
My name is Karen Chapman. I'm the Planning and Development Director at the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission.
Excellent, thank you.
You're
So, I guess as a matter of background for the public, this committee had been working on this for a while, and we met a bunch of times last year. We came up with a bunch of ideas and a bunch of specifications, and we kind of got to a roadblock when all of a sudden we realized that what we were doing was not necessarily a traditional agricultural accessory bylaw, and that it was gonna become a challenge to draft. So, at that point, I'd agreed to investigate drafting, and then the planning board got really busy. And then the DLTA opportunity came around, and we were like, well, I know how we can get this to move forward. So,
So here we are.
So here we are. So, I don't know what you've had for an opportunity to go through and look at things, but essentially where I see it as leaving off is, we came up with some really good ideas, but then the challenges that we started running into were things like, well, some of these things aren't necessarily agricultural accessory uses, because if you have somebody who has a small farm and they're possibly making more money off of the accessory use, because you only make about 12 grand a year growing hay, then if you start setting things up with the dollar test, that was gonna be an issue. But we still wanted to encourage those kinds of uses that still preserve the kind of the character of the land and the character of the underlying operation. Then after that, we started running into challenges about uses that are eco-tourism based. We came up with a bunch of potential uses and developed a list for them that we thought would be good and helpful for ecotourism, but we ran into challenges on, well, how do we define a property that's subject to them? And at about the same time, we got back a legal memo from the Attorney General office denying our revised marijuana bylaw, because they were taking the position that that requirements based upon area were invalid because they were discriminatory against businesses that aren't necessarily well-funded, and that is discrimination against individuals that come from possibly protected classes. So at that moment, up until that moment, we were ways we do this is by sorting out by lot size. Then that put some pause on that. And then we started saying, well, maybe what we're ultimately talking about is doing some kind of agro-tourism, eco-tourism opportunity overlay, where it's like, well, here are the areas where we want to allow these uses. Here are the kinds of uses, here are the kinds of properties we want to see them on. But then we carve out some of the areas in the town where we think it would make it more contentious than necessary, like some of the subdivisions and like those areas, we
Right.
carve them out of the
Right.
agro-tourism, eco-tourism opportunity zone, or whatever it is we ultimately call it,
Right.
because in our research, we found people who did things related to the agricultural accessory uses, but we didn't find anybody that had an example or a predicate that we could use for working in more of the ecotourism. And I guess as a little bit of additional background on that, what drove the discussion of bringing in the ecotourism uses is when we looked at the Rutland did an excellent agricultural accessory bylaw. They did a really good job, but we had some differences. Most of the farms in Hubbardston are smaller, and they're not necessarily the same kind of commercial scale operation. They tend to be people who are on a second career, who are also working full-time,
Right.
where the character and nature of the property is totally a farm, but if we were to do it by a monetary definition, it would just break down. So that got us to the point of where we were like, well, we need help on this.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody else has anything to add on that history, but
Just for a little update, the bill that was drifting around in the last session to define agritourism didn't make it through, but it has been refiled in the current session, so it's working its way through the process again. It just becomes, what it will do is add agritourism to 40A, Section 3.
Oh,
Things
okay.
that you can't regulate at the
Yeah.
town level, so that's gonna be
Yeah.
pertinent.
Yeah, yeah.
Stuff that actually falls under that definition.
Do you remember whose bill it is?
Ed Kennedy.
Well, and I think the only other option, the only other thing to bring up is some of our farmers are worried that we may kind of stifle. You know, I've heard
They
it
put
from a
more
couple,
rules
yeah, if,
on.
yeah, they, and not that they're worried about rules so much. I mean, Keith, you tell me something if you heard something different. But it's not only rules so much too, it's also having to pay to play. You know what I mean? Like if there's certain,
There's fees involved. too.
Yeah.
It could make it prohibitive.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
I don't think anything that's going on currently in town, me probably being the biggest, could afford to pay fees
Okay.
for, again, potentially weather-dependent events,
yeah.
which most farm things would be,
Right,
unless we're going to build a brew barn.
And, well, that's what I mean, they would be,
Yeah,
So-
which is a whole different game
Yes.
altogether.
yes,
Wanna build a brew barn?
yeah.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, because you have this.
You're approved.
You have stuff completely outside that it is weather dependent and
Right.
it's, you're not gonna have, 300 people at a sit down formal like wedding or brew barn or, stuff like that. You have farms that do stuff that are outside, and even if they had a wedding that was outside for like 100 people, you're talking seasonal, it's outside, you're not talking all these structures
Right.
and, you know what I mean? So there is a very big difference, And like even think of like a corn maze, like Davis Animal Farm and
Right.
stuff like that. Yes, it's seasonal, yes, it brings in a lot of people, but it's very seasonal. So there's not a lot of structure. So it's like there's so many different variables. It's hard to kind of narrow things down, compared to something that's a little bit smaller, like pick your own blueberries. That's quiet and doesn't really bother anybody.
Right.
There is a discussion out of the last meeting that we had where we went through the various uses and put together a table on what we thought should go through some kind of site plan review and what shouldn't go through some kind of site plan review. But generally, the mandate that we got from the select board, the planning board, the EDC, and from some of our local polling, is that people would like to see this to be as broadly enabling as possible while still being something that can pass in town at town meeting.
And I see in your minutes that you talked about section 3, so we obviously have to be careful about not going into that at all, because there's lots of case law on agricultural stuff.
Yeah, we're actually fixing some of our section 3 problems.
That's the list that we had arrived at. We just didn't get into any detail on
Oh, okay.
what the, where the breakdown would be between minimal review and more review.
You put together a draft.
Yeah, it's in your email.
I mean, it was a long summer last year, like, it was just me here. Well, yeah, as you know, Mark is, at this point, Mark was volunteering for the town. He was not paid staff. That was making my life as a planning board chair livable. So, yeah, there were some things that I missed from last summer. Yeah, no, that's certainly helpful. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go find that in my email.
So I saw also that you have a Google Drive
We
where
do.
you've stored all your research and
Yep.
graphs and lists, and
Yes, we do.
can I access that? Or
As
can
long
you
as,
send me
as long as you have a Google
documents?
account, I can
I do.
connect you to that.
I do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be really helpful. I guess I did see this. I just,
Well, it says you sent it
Cell
out.
tower. yeah. So yeah, so that's kinda where we ended up with it, so, then like I said, we, at around the time of this, we got a big site plan in, then we lost all of our staff in town hall, we didn't have a town administrator, and I was attempting to be cook and bottle washer for land use, so.
Understandable.
A lot of this is just a blur to me from that time period.
Right.
Um,
So you want it a combined standalone bylaw? We're not editing any of the other stuff unless it needs to be.
Well, that's kind of an open question.
Okay.
Because we weren't able to, other than the Rutland example, which I thought was excellent,
Mhm.
where that essentially added a new article to their zoning bylaws.
Right.
But it did it all through the guise of agricultural accessory.
Uh-huh.
I didn't see a good example that accomplished everything that we wanted to. So I think it might turn into maybe a combination of like a rural opportunity overlay or whatever we call it, along with some underlying changes.
Okay.
And we are making changes to our allowable uses as they stand now, coming up in the next town meeting, to make them compliant with 40A Section 3. Like we're fixing that greenhouse thing and the daycare thing. I think those are the obvious problems with the Davis amendments in there. I think there might be a couple others hiding out, but those are the obvious ones that relate to
Right.
the work of this committee.
Okay. And are you taking uses out or adding uses in, or just changing them based on where you want them to be?
On the changes we're making now?
Adding
Yeah.
uses.
Yeah. Well, for this project, we're
In
adding.
whichever
Yeah, for-
structure we're talking about.
For the correcting, what we have coming up on town meeting, we're
Oh.
specifically pulling greenhouse off of the special
Oh,
permit
so you're
required
just
things.
taking the things.
Yeah, and then we're adding, was it daycare or childcare center, whatever the language was to be compliant.
Childcare.
Yeah, where we're adding that in as an allowable by right use in all districts, like it's supposed to be under state law.
Religious education,
Yeah, those were already there.
there's like a whole list of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I thought we were talking about
Yeah.
where we were headed with this thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for-
the ones that are going in for this town meeting are pretty minimal, and it's
Yeah.
basically just addressing two issues
Yeah.
regarding 40A Section 3.
Yeah,
So
for-
you don't go to court, I understand.
Yeah, well, we had an issue, and I don't wanna get too far off track, but we had an issue come up where somebody came in and they wanted to open up a daycare there, but they had another issue where we were gonna have to give them a special permit in order to waive something else that was going on for them. But because we can't issue a special permit, it was like, you do you, I guess. So we didn't wanna be back in that position again, and we don't wanna be in that position with these,
Right.
because we have people who are either currently operating businesses or close to operating businesses that really should be compliant with our zoning, but because of the way some of the things are structured in our zoning, it's currently open to interpretation, so we really wanna give those people relief. Because like there are folks that are doing like some weddings and stuff, not necessarily like large scale
Right.
kind, but
But
like
weddings.
small, yeah. So we want to recognize and enable that kind, but also make sure we have a backstop on it where if somebody's opening a major venue, they're certainly gonna need site plan review and
Right.
probably a special permit,
Yeah.
so. And that's something that came up because we had somebody come in who wanted to buy, a large property off of George Howell Road. And it's like a 200-acre property, a lot of it's subject to restriction. They're like, well, we're gonna open up a wedding venue. It's like, well, that's not really permissible there. Well, we're gonna open up a country club. It's like, I guess you are.
And it was very weird, that's the way we have things written, and
Mhm.
we need to fix this to
Yeah.
allow the farms to be able to do
Right.
things, you
Yeah.
know, that's what we're trying to encourage, that's what we are,
Right.
so.
So how many farmers do you think are doing things that are allowable under section 3? Like, I'm just concerned
I
that,
think there are very few operations in town that actually meet the revenue definitions
do.
in section 3.
okay, so
Yeah.
so you want to allow that,
And that's kind of what created
Okay.
the issue, because we saw it ultimately a question of the character and nature of the property, where like, okay, well, you have this farm, your ultimate revenue is you're selling hay, you're breaking even. We want to create an economic incentive for that property to not get pulled out of 61 and subdivided and all of that stuff.
right?
So where arguably the town needed this bylaw 20 years ago, in order to kind of prevent what has already happened with those businesses being chipped away, but better
But-
late than never.
Yeah, but that's why we were angling away from accessory use to agriculture. Because the number of properties in town that have agriculture as a primary use
Yeah.
by, and or by the definition
Right.
in section 3 are very few. We want to encourage things more than
More.
those two properties that might qualify as agriculture.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically dangle that carrot and let's see who wants to be a farmer. You know what I mean? I can't, like, there's no other way to say that, if we're gonna keep these, if we're gonna keep these farms intact, or maybe resurrect some of the ones that aren't being used anymore
Right.
as farms,
Right.
to try to keep our rural characteristics, then in order to run a farm, these people like kill themselves all day long and then still work two
Right.
jobs.
Right.
That's
Right.
not sustainable, that's why
Right.
all these farms are getting chipped up and literally sold as house
Right.
lots and disappearing.
So you want to go above and beyond the state law and allow more things?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we, we thought we were angling toward an overlay district, but we're not wedded to that as a concept. If there
Okay.
are alternative approaches that might work to accomplish the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think part of the issue that we run into is when you look at our zoning map up there and you look at what looks like a sickly hurricane track.
Yeah.
We ultimately just have 3 zones currently to work with.
Yep.
Because we don't really have the light industrial, despite the fact that it exists in the bylaws. We have the commercial, the town center, then everything else is residential agricultural. So it's tough for us to say, oh yeah, hey, here's what works in this, because covered within that we have pretty much the whole west side of town, which is very open. Contains the sand pits, some farms, all of that stuff. And then we have the east side, which has some subdivisions and residential developments in it.
And water supplies.
Yeah. So just being able to say, this works in this zone, period, end of subject, it doesn't work
Right.
well for
Right.
us. So that's why we were kinda open-ended about, well, what is the solution here? I don't know, from a nerding out citizen planner standpoint, like, this is a really interesting problem.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to
yeah,
figuring out
yeah,
what the solution is.
yeah.
Mhm.
No,
Like, it's
it
fun to
is.
nerd out on, but it's not an easy one.
It's very interesting, and other of our communities who are similar sizes or just a little bigger are struggling with the same thing. So this will be a good exercise.
Yeah, like I said, I think
Could be
it's.
trailblazers.
Yeah, well, I think it is.
Yeah.
It's, at least as far as the ecotourism stuff, I haven't gone through the zoning. I was trying to think of places the last couple of weeks where maybe they've done more from an ecotourism standpoint. And I was thinking maybe Charlemont, because I know they did, they were talking about it at the CP, whatever training it was a couple weeks ago.
TC.
Yeah, and they had done like a tourism zone, and in that tourism zone, they made it easier for like Zor and like all of those things to like operate like their whitewater tours, and easier to build lodging and all of that stuff. But they pushed it towards Route 2, and I haven't had a chance to actually pull the zoning and look at it, but it did come up at the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, I did some quick Google searching online and I found a bunch of stuff, but I haven't read it yet. So hopefully we can figure this out.
I know, I know. It's like, our town needs something, and this is,
Yeah.
yeah, I think this could help with, because we don't have business, we don't have this, that, and
Right.
the other. This is hopefully
Right.
something that could help us, business-wise, yet keep our rural characteristics, so, but we also don't wanna confine it to what is happening today, we also have to kinda think what's gonna come down the
Right.
pipe, you know, cause it's hard to see, like, you know, 20 years from now, did you think, you know, some of these farms were gonna have breweries, and it was gonna be a thing? You know, it's hard to see what's coming down the pipe, but if we kinda keep it so it's a little bit open, but
Right.
not go crazy.
Would I be wrong to say it would be an outdoor business bylaw? No,
Could be indoor.
I think that's a part of it. I don't know
know.
if,
like, how do you group the agricultural stuff
Well, 'cause
with
if-
like the wedding venue, or
Yeah.
the farm wants to have a wedding venue over on this part of their property? Like, how do you,
Yeah, or the ice cream stand,
Right.
or, you know,
The
the,
commercial aspect of,
yeah, how do you,
How
because,
is the tent at what
does Karen have a
Hughesdon
copy of this?
zoned
Might not share this.
or passed?
I don't know.
That,
no, it's the.
that is how, we started bucketing it. Mark had put together that.
Oh, I like that rural enterprise.
Yeah, we played with a bunch of different terms, rural opportunity, rural enterprise, all that kind of stuff.
Break out the thesaurus, find something.
Yeah.
Hey, that's how I came up with the Diddy Dash. When it made me giggle, I was like, oh, we have a winner.
And is this, definition the Massachusetts definition, or one that you sort of took things from here and there and put in?
Which one?
Agriculture and agricultural definition. Did you get it from somewhere?
Like a year ago.
That.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
no,
right,
yeah.
Yeah.
Let me look.
I can't remember yesterday.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's the MGL
Okay,
definition.
so we'll have to keep an eye on if and when they change it. Yeah, when you're talking about agritourism, you're talking about open space, so outside.
Yeah, and
But that doesn't mean there can't be like a little house that they built where
Yeah.
kids
Yep.
can go in and do activities.
To have
Yeah.
these structures and
Right.
facilities,
Right,
depending
Toilets.
on
Yeah.
besides
do you
your,
have to have a bathroom?
you know,
Yeah.
whether it's an
Porta
outhouse
potty,
or,
right.
a porta potty, or whether it's
Yeah.
a,
Yeah,
depending on what you're looking at.
and we have a lot of open space.
You do,
And well, just from the watershed, that's about 40% of the town,
Yeah.
so coming up with businesses that can leverage the new access plan in a way that's good for the community is, well, what else do we have to do? Because we don't have a lot of options,
right,
because we don't have
Water,
a
sewer.
ton of unconstrained land except for some of the sand pits.
right. No, this is a good start. To put my zoning cap on.
Yeah, so in our process, we talked a bunch internally. We looked at some polling that was done previously. We didn't do any polling of the public specifically for this. And we hadn't yet done any public input sessions.
Okay,
So, the polling that we used was only a year or two old. I can't remember who. It wasn't particularly old, but most of the uses that we put in there were pretty popular.
which one was it from?
It's in the share drive.
Okay.
Somebody had done it shortly before I went on the planning board. It might have been part of the master plan.
Oh, the one from, the previous planning board from Bracco?
No, well, granted, the master plan has been going on since then.
Like
but
10 years, yeah.
Yeah,
Eight.
I believe it was the polling from that we were.
So you're
were
talking
relying on.
about, that was actually probably about 2017.
Yeah, but I'll
But
I'll
it's not
invite you to
too
the
far.
Google Drive and it's
Okay.
all in there, so.
it's, I'm gonna write it down. K Chapman,
Well, is it the email address I email you at?
no,
Oh, okay.
That's gonna be a
Well,
Google
let me
address.
let me actually put it in.
Gmail address.
Just access it now, there you
Yeah.
go. But, but yeah, we kicked around so many different ideas, we were here for how, like, we were talking about, what happens if somebody is a dandelion farmer to make wine in their yard, you know, like, compared to, what happens if somebody wants to open up a campground in their backyard, you know, like, how many different, it was like, we were all over the place, but the whole thing is like, you don't know there's farms out there that do this stuff.
right,
You know, there's places that tour, that have campgrounds that, you know, make wines and like jellies and, you know, all this different stuff, and, you know, they have classes and they do like all these different things, so it's like, it's so hard to try to put things in buckets and narrow it
Right.
and be
Yeah.
specific, but yet not be specific and be open, you know, to new ideas that we didn't put on a list, you know? But yeah, hiking and bike riding and all kinds of things that we sat around and talked about. All the meetings that we did have are on video,
okay,
so on YouTube, on the town channel, so
Okay.
you can see what we did
All right.
talk about if you wanna really spend some time.
So what
Not that we had a ton, don't get me
K
wrong.
Chapman, I don't know if it's at MRPC no, K Chapman .mrpc@gmail.com or at mrpc.gmail.
Wow. This isn't gonna be
I don't use it
confusing
at
at all.
all.
I mean, that-
It's gotta be .mrpc at Gmail.
Yeah, probably.
I do this too, I'm like, what's my email again? I have like 12 of them, which one am I giving you?
So,
Is it gonna come to you if he sends it to that address?
Yes,
well, I just did your regular
Oh, okay.
MRPC email to be safe, and
Okay.
then what is the other one? So, K.
Chapman. .mrpc, no, .mrpc@gmail.com.
Sounds good, we're gonna find out.
I only use it when I share things with the town, so.
Worst comes to worst, just
I mean,
email
it
it
came
to
up
him.
as a suggested email in the folder,
Okay.
and in case it's not you, I'll just set it so that you can't delete files.
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
I mean, cause other than that, they're all public documents,
Yeah.
so. But yeah, bunch of good stuff in there, cause some of the other, we looked at some stuff from other states.
Yeah, that's what I was interested in, any of the research that you've already done and you've already discounted things, you know.
Yeah, Lancaster, Pennsylvania had agritourism guidelines that were
Is that where the
pretty in-depth.
Amish are?
Yeah, the Amish are actually moving out of there because of economic pressure. They're moving to,
Really?
yeah, they're moving to Kentucky and West Virginia because land's getting too expensive there.
Wow.
Yeah, there is actually an Amish flight going on.
Very
That
slowly.
That sounds like a good name for like a brewery line or something,
Yeah.
the Amish, like, something.
Darts, the kind of,
Yeah.
Yeah, something, like.
But that's part of why they're looking at, yeah, there was also some stuff from Vermont and most of the places you would expect. We also looked at the Rural 11 report that CMRPC did.
Oh,
for
right.
all of the other towns to the south of us, because that's what started off the Rutland one. The Rutland Agricultural Accessory Bylaw.
And are you part of the rural caucus? Do you participate in that for CMRPC?
Yeah,
You were there, were you there?
I couldn't make it, but Nick was.
I was there in my
Yeah.
pajamas, remember?
Oh, that's right.
I-
No, I don't know, cause you wouldn't get on the camera.
I was the light of the
I wanted to see
meeting,
what kind of
Karen.
pajamas you wore.
Yeah.
They probably have little duckies on them or something.
I can picture that.
Pink flamingos.
Yeah.
See, it is a two-seltzer meeting. Alright, so what else do we need to help you get started, and what are the next steps, and what should we, well, we still need to do the actual scoping document.
Yes, so now I have a lot more information, I can do the scope of services,
Okay,
send it out so you can sign it.
You got it. I'm not doing the budget anymore, so I'll get this one to you a little faster
It's all right.
than the other one.
We can't start working till you sign it, so.
okay. So, anybody else have anything else? Any
So yeah,
questions?
I'll read all your documents and I wanna go through your bylaw and see if there's any other places where there might be an issue or we don't wanna repeat or contradict or whatever.
Yep.
And it's good you have the Google Drive, I can put things in there and just email you and say, hey, there's a doc in there.
Yep.
Cool.
Awesome.
And you don't have a regular meeting schedule, you would just call it.
Well,
If I
when we get going, we'll have a regular meeting scheduled
Okay.
again. So when it becomes necessary, we'll do it. But on that, I won't schedule a meeting until we have the scope and.
Do we wanna call one, just so that there's a, kind of a
Deadline?
deadline or a goal?
I guess we could just have a meeting for like a month from now.
I was thinking 2 weeks.
I mean, when's 2 weeks?
You are not funny. Not funny at all.
I mean, 2 weeks I'll be in Banff, so that's not gonna work.
Nice. That's exciting.
Gotta get the last little bit out of ski season.
Are we looking at Thursdays to stay on? Cause I'm like probably like the most ridiculously overscheduled person on the planet for
Well,
evening meetings.
I wouldn't hate it if we could go before the planning board meeting on the 20th.
Okay, that's fine.
So that would
20th?
that would put this
April
5:30 to
20th
6:30.
has-
You have a planning board meeting on the 20th of
Yeah.
April?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's when
Oh,
there's a
no.
joint, meeting.
Yeah.
That's our regular meeting. What joint meeting is it?
Ah.
The public budget hearing.
Yeah,
Oh,
you may wanna,
Do we have any, we
Think
don't
about
have any public hearings on
that.
it for that, do we?
no.
If we did,
We
it'd
can
be pretty
reschedule.
uneventful.
We can reschedule.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, we're gonna have to
No
figure it
matter
out
what.
because we
Sounds like,
we
yeah, the
do
20th
have
is
a
good.
pending
That
special
was fine,
permit,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
so yeah,
27?
27th is fine.
I don't see a reason the 27th wouldn't work.
Yeah, the last two are fine, the first two Thursdays are never good for me, so.
Okay, so I guess we'd be having the planning board meeting on the 27th at 6:30, and then if we could do this at 5:30, that would be optimal.
I'll put that in my schedule.
I can consolidate babysitting. I mean, I gotta rush home after this to grab Cody because Heather has to go to capital planning meeting for Paxton.
Yeah. Well, she said something about.
I worked with her when she was Budgewitz,
Yep.
when she was in Ashburnham,
Yep. Yeah, she was in Ashburnham.
right before her motorcycle accident,
Mountain biking,
mountain biking.
yep.
See how that goes with the rumor mill?
I mean,
What is a
I
motorcycle
mean, it
and you
might as well have
shouldn't-
been a motorcycle, she got totaled.
Yeah, that's what we heard.
Yeah,
I'm glad she's good.
yeah, no, doing well, she went to Barry, Wellesley, and now she's in Paxton.
Wow, that's quite a variety.
Yep. Awesome.
Great.
So, anything else that we have for this meeting?
I think that's it.
Alright, so we're gonna schedule for 5:30 on the 27th for the planning board meeting, which now needs to be scheduled on the 27th. Alright, so with that, how about a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
How about a second? Here in a first and a second, non-debatable, let's have a vote.
Aye.
Right.
And the chair is aye. This meeting is adjourned.